Hi everyone. So for today's video, I'm going to be reading one of my new favorite poets who I've recently discovered, Sharon Olds. So this is a collection of poems from 1980 to 2002, and the anthology is called Strike Sparks. This is the cover. Sharon Olds is an incredible poet who writes in the confessional mode often, and I figured it's really helped me to find a place amongst all this, and I hope it does for you too. So I'm going to be reading some selected poems from here. Trigger warning can be issued for any of these. They're a bit unsettling. They discuss topics of rape, murder, sexual assault, sexual violence, abuse, etc. Just wanted to issue that trigger warning just in case. But with that, let's get into it. So this is The Sisters of Sexual Treasure. The Sisters of Sexual Treasure. As soon as my sister and I got out of our mother's house, all we wanted to do was fuck, obliterate her tiny sparrow body and narrow grasshopper legs. The men's bodies were like our father's body. The massive hocks, flanks, thighs, male, structure of the hips, knees, calves, we could have him there. The steep, forbidden, buttocks, backs of the knees, the cock in our mouth. Ah, the cock in our mouth. Like explorers who discover a lost city, we went nuts with joy, undressed the men slowly and carefully, as if uncovering buried artifacts that proved our theory of the lost culture, that if Mother said it wasn't there, it was there. Next up, we have The Language of the Brag. The Language of the Brag. I have wanted excellence in the knife throw. I have wanted to use my exceptionally strong and accurate arms and my straight posture and quick electric muscles to achieve something at the center of a crowd, the blade piercing the bark deep, the haft slowly and heavily vibrating like the cock. I have wanted some epic use for my excellent body, some heroism, some American achievement beyond the ordinary for my extraordinary self, magnetic and tensile. I have stood by the sandlot and watched the boys play. I have wanted courage. I have thought about fire and the crossing of waterfalls. I have dragged around, my belly big with cowardice and safety, stool charcoal from the iron pills, huge breasts leaking colostrum, legs swelling, hands swelling, face swelling and reddening, hair falling out, inner sex stabbed again and again with pain like a knife. I have lain down. I have lain down and sweated and shaken and passed blood and shit and water, and slowly alone in the center of a circle I have passed the new person out, and they have lifted the new person free of the act and wiped the new person free of that language of blood like praise all over the body. I have done what you wanted to, Walt Whitman, Allen Ginsberg. I have done this thing, I and the other women, this exceptional act with the exceptional heroic body, this giving birth, this glistening verb, and I am putting my proud American boast right here with the others. Insane. Next we have Race Riot Tulsa, 1921. Race Riot Tulsa, 1921. The blazing white shirts of the white men are blanks on the page. Looking at them is like looking at the sun. You could go blind. Under the snouts of the machine guns, the dark glowing skin of the women and men going to jail. You can look at the gleaming horse chestnuts of their faces the whole day. All but one descend from the wood back of the flatbread truck. He lies, shoes pointed north and south, knuckles curled under on the splintered slats, head thrown back as if he is in a field, his face tilted up toward the sky, to get the sun on it, to darken it more and more toward the color of the human. Miscarriage. When I was a month pregnant, the great clots of blood appeared in the pale green swaying water of the toilet, brick red like black in the salty translucent brine, like forms of life appearing, jellyfish with the clear-cut shapes of fungi. That was the only appearance made by that child, the rough, scalloped shapes falling slowly. A month later, our son was conceived, and I never went back to mourn the one who came as far as the sill with its information. That we could botch something, you and I. All wrapped in purple, it floated away like a messenger put to death for bearing bad news. New mother. A week after our child was born, you cornered me in the spare room and we sank down on the bed. You kissed me and kissed me. My milk undid its burning slip knot through my nipples, soaking my shirt. All week I had smelled of milk, fresh milk, sour. I began to throb. My sex had been torn easily as cloth by the crown of her head. I'd been cut with a knife and sewn, the stitches pulling at my skin, and the first time you're broken, you don't know you'll be healed again. Better than before. I lay in fear and blood and milk while you kissed and kissed me, your lips hot and swollen as a teenage boy's, your sex dry and big, all of you so tender. You hung over me, over the nest of the stitches, over the splitting and tearing, with the patience of someone who finds a wounded animal in the woods and stays with it, not leaving its side until it is whole, until it can run again. Sex without love. How do they do it, the ones who make love without love? Formal as dancers, gliding over each other like ice skaters over the ice, fingers hooked inside each other's bodies, faces red as steak wine, wet as the children at birth whose mothers are going to give them away. How do they come to the still waters and not love the one who came there with them, heat rising slowly as steam off their joined skin? I guess they are the true religious, the purest, the pros, the ones who will not accept a false messiah, love the priest instead of the God. They do not mistake the partner for their own pleasure. They are like great runners. They know when they are alone with the road surface, the cold, the wind, the fit of their shoes, their overall cardiovascular health, just factors, like the other in the bed, and not their truth, which is the single body alone in the universe against its own best time. Damn. Oh. Rite of passage. As the guests arrive at our son's party, they gather in the living room, short men in first grade with smooth jaws and chins. Hands in pockets, they stand around jostling, jockeying for place, small fights breaking out and calming. One says to another, "How old are you?" 6. "I'm 7. "So?" They eye each other, seeing themselves tiny in the other's pupils. They clear their throats a lot. A room of small bankers, they fold their arms and frown. "I could beat you up," a 7 says to a 6. The midnight cake, round and heavy as a turret, behind them on the table. My son, freckles like specks of nutmeg on his cheeks, chest narrow as the balsa keel of a model boat, long hands cool and thin as the day they guided him out of me, speaks up as a host for the sake of the group. "We could easily kill a 2-year-old, he says in his clear voice. The other men agree. They clear their throats like generals. They relax and get down to playing war, celebrating my son's life. Crazy. Sorry. 35 out of 10. Brushing out our daughter's brown, silken hair before the mirror, I see the gray gleaming on my head, the silver-haired servant behind her. Why is it just as we begin to go, they begin to arrive, the fold in my neck clarifying as the fine bones of her hips sharpen? As my skin shows its dry pitting, she opens like a moist, precise flower on the tip of a cactus, as my last chances to bear a child are falling through my body, the duds among them, her full purse of eggs, round and firm as hard-boiled yolks, is about to snap its clasp. I brush her tangled, fragrant hair at bedtime. It's an old story, the oldest we have on our planet, the story of replacement. The girl. This is a particularly triggering poem, so discussions of murder and rape will be present. The girl. They chased her and her friend through the woods and caught them in a waste clearing. Broken random bracken, a couple of old The girl. They chased her and her friend through the woods and caught them in a waste clearing. Broken random bracken, a couple of old mattresses, as if the place had been prepared. The thin one with the straight hair started raping her best friend, and the curly one stood above her, thrust his thumbs back inside her jaws. She was 12, stuck his penis in her mouth and throat faster and faster and faster. Then the straight-haired one stood up. They lay like pulled-up roots at his feet, naked 12-year-old girls. He said, "Now you're going to know what it's like to be shot 5 times and slaughtered like a pig." And they switched mattresses. The blonde was raping and stabbing her friend, the straight-haired one sticking inside her in one place and another. The point of his gun pressed deep into her waist. She felt a little click in her spine and a sitting like 7-Up in her head. And then he pulled the tree branch across her throat, and everything went dark. The gym went dark, and her mother's kitchen, even the globes of light on the rounded lips of her mother's nesting bowls, went dark. When she woke up, she was lying on the cold, copper-smelling earth. The mattress was pulled up over her like a blanket. She saw the dead body of her best friend, and she began to run. She came to the edge of the woods, and she stepped out from the trees like a wounded debreeding. She walked across to the tracks and said to the railway brakeman, "Please, sir. Please, sir." At the trial, she had to say everything. Her elder sister helped her with the words. She had to sit in the room with them and point to them. Now she goes to parties but does not smoke. She is a cheerleader. She throws her body up in the air and kicks her legs and comes home and does the dishes and her homework. She has to work hard in math. The sky over the roof of her bed filled with white planets. Every night she prays for the soul of her best friend and then thanks God for life. She knows what all of us want never to know, and she does a cartwheel, the splits. She shakes the shredded pom-poms in her fists. When? I wonder now only when it will happen, when the young mother will hear the noise like somebody's pressure cooker down the block going off. She'll go out in the yard, holding her small daughter in her arms, and there, above the end of the street, in the air above the line of the trees, she will see it rising, lifting up over our horizon, the upper rim of the gold ball, large as a giant planet, starting to lift up over yours. She will stand there in the yard holding her daughter, looking at it rise and glow and blossom and rise, and the child will open her arms to it. It will look so beautiful. I go back to May 1937. I see them standing at the formal gates of their colleges. I see my father strolling out under the ochre sandstone arch, the red tiles glinting like bent plates of blood behind his head. I see my mother, with a few light books at her hip, standing at the pillar made of tiny bricks, the wrought iron gate still open behind her, its sword tips aglow in the May air. They are about to graduate. They are about to get married. They are kids. They are dumb. All they know is they are innocent. They would never hurt anybody. I want to go up to them and say, "Stop, don't do it. She's the wrong woman, he's the wrong man. You are going to do things you cannot imagine you would ever do. You are going to do bad things to children. You are going to suffer in ways you have not heard of. You are going to want to die." I want to go up to them there in the late May sunlight and say it. Her hungry, pretty face turning to me. Her pitiful, beautiful, untouched body. His arrogant, handsome face turning to me, his pitiful, beautiful, untouched body. But I don't do it. I want to live. I take them up like the male and female paper dolls and bang them together at the hips, like chips of flint, as if to strike sparks from them. I say, "Do what you are going to do, and I will tell about it." That's a poem that I actually encountered for the first time in high school, and we had to do like an acted out version of it. But it didn't hit the way it just did. Also, I apologize for the texts. Why my mother... I love the English language. Why my mother made me. Maybe I am what she always wanted, my father as a woman. Maybe I am what she wanted to be when she first saw him, tall and smart, standing there in the college yard with the hard male light of 1937 shining on his slicked hair. She wanted that power. She wanted that size. She pulled and pulled through him as if he were silky bourbon taffy. She pulled and pulled and pulled through his body till she drew me out, sticky and gleaming, her life after her life. Maybe I am the way I am because she wanted exactly that, wanted there to be a woman a lot like her, but who would not hold back. So she pressed herself hard against him, pressed and pressed the clear, soft ball of herself like a stick of beaten cream against his stained, sour steel grater until I came out of the other side of his body, a tall woman, stained, sour, sharp, but with that milk at the center of my nature. I lie here now as I once lay in the crook of her arm, her creature, and I feel her looking down into me the way the maker of a sword gazes at his face in the steel of the blade. Topography. After we flew across the country, we got in bed, laid our bodies intricately together like maps laid face to face, east to west, my San Francisco against your New York, your Fire Island against my Sonoma, my New Orleans deep in your Texas, your Idaho bright on my Great Lakes, my Kansas burning against your Kansas burning against my Kansas, your Eastern Standard Time pressing into my Pacific Time, my Mountain Time beating against your Central Time, your sun rising swiftly from the right, my sun rising swiftly from the left, your moon rising slowly from the left, my moon rising slowly from the right, until all four bodies of the sky burn above us, sealing us together, all our cities twin cities, all our states united, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Bathing the newborn. I love with an almost fearful love to remember the first baths I gave him, our second child. So I knew what to do. I laid the little torso along my left forearm, nape of the neck in the crook of my elbow, hips nearly as small as a least tern's tail against my wrist, thigh held loosely in the loop of thumb and forefinger, the sign that means exactly right. I'd soap him, the violet cold feet, the scrotum wrinkled as a waved whelk, the chest, hands, clavicles, throat, gummy fures of the scalp. When I got him too soapy, he'd slide in my grip like an armful of buttered noodles, but I'd hold him not too tight. I felt that I was good for him. I'd tell him about his wonderful body and the wonderful soap, and he'd look up at me, 1 week old, his eyes still wide and apprehensive. I love that time when you croon and croon to them. You can see the calm slowly entering them. You can sense it in your clasping hand, the loose spine relaxing against the muscle of your forearm. You feel the fear leaving their bodies. He lay in the blue oval plastic bay tub and looked at me in wonder and began to move his silky limbs at will in the water. "41, alone, no gerbil. In the strange quiet, I realize there's no one else in this house. No bucktooth mouth pulls at a stainless steel teat. No hairy mammal runs on a treadmill. Charlie is dead, the last of our children's half-children. When our daughter found him lying in the shavings, transmogrified backwards from a living body into a bolt of rotted bread, she turned her back on early motherhood and went on single with nothing. Crackers, Fluffy, pretzel, biscuit, Charlie, buried on the old farm we bought where she could know nature. Well, now she knows it, and it sucks. Creatures she loved, mobile and needy, have gone down stiff and indifferent. She will not adopt again, though she cannot have children yet. Her body is like a blueprint for a woman's body, So now everything stops for a while. Now I must wait many years to hear in this house again the faint, powerful call of a young animal. My son, the man. Suddenly his shoulders got a lot wider, the way Houdini would expand his body while people were putting him in chains. It seems no time since I would help him put on his sleeper, guide his calves into the shadowy interior, zip him up and toss him up and catch his weight. I cannot imagine him no longer a child, and I know I must get ready, get over my fear of men now my son is going to be one. This was not what I had in mind when he pressed up through me like a sealed trunk through the ice of the Hudson, snapped the padlock, unsnaked the chains, appeared in my arms. Now he looks at me the way Houdini studied a box to learn the way out, then smiled and let himself be monocled. And the last one I'm going to read is called The Connoissance of Slugs, which is my favorite Sharon Olds poem ever. The Connoissance of Slugs. When I was a connoisseur of slugs, I would part the ivy leaves and look for the naked jelly of those greenish creatures, translucent strangers glistening along the stones slowly, their gelatinous bodies at my mercy. Made mostly of water, they would shrivel to nothing if they were sprinkled with salt, but I was not interested in that. What I liked was to draw aside the ivy, breathe the odor of the wall, and stand there in silence until the slug forgot I was there, and sent its antenna up out of its head, the glimmering umber horns rising like telescopes, until finally the sensitive knobs would pop out the ends, unerring and intimate. Years later, when I first saw a naked man, I gasped with pleasure to see that quiet mystery reenacted, the slow, elegant being coming out of hiding and gleaming in the powdery air, eager and so trusting you could weep. Thank you so much for watching, and have a beautiful day.